How you going, guys? Dean from Blog for the Blood God here with the second installment on my new Chaos Space Marine Codex YouTube series, where I'll be breaking down units, stratagems, abilities, combos, all kinds of things. In this second installment, I'm going to be following up on the previous episode where I talked about the Lord Discordant and how to wield him defensively, with the second part on the Lord Discordant about how to wield him offensively. And the reason I broke this down into two separate videos instead of just making one Lord Discordant video is because he can fill very different battlefield roles. The first video I talked about how to make him as durable as possible, and the idea behind that is you can take multiple characters in your list, make them all durable as fuck, and bait your opponent into picking Assassinate as a secondary objective, and then you can actively deny them those points. So not only is it a way that you can use the units to get the most utility out of them, but it's also a way that you can impact the scoreboard. So that was the first video, and in this video I'm going to be talking about how to use him offensively and how to use him aggressively. And the idea here is you would probably take one or two additional characters on top of him, and that way your opponent's not going to pick Assassinate because they're maxed out at 10 victory points if they take it, so they're less likely to take it, and that gives you the freedom to use these characters in a disposable way by sending them out like missiles and hoping that you can trade up with them by doing as much damage when you do send them out as possible. So that's what this video is going to be about. It's going to be about how to use the Lord Discordant specifically in that manner, because the Lord Discordant brings a lot to the table that other characters don't. I did a pretty deep dive on his profile and his abilities and all those sorts of things, so if you want to check that out in the first video. This is sort of like a sequel, a part two, so I'm going to assume that you've seen that video, so that I might skip over some things in this one. So make sure if you haven't seen that previous video, you jump back, check that out first, and then come back and watch this one. However, I will do my best to make sure that this video is a standalone piece of content that you can watch without having to have seen previous episodes. So without further ado, let's get into Masterclass Lord Discordant Part 2, How to Use Him Aggressively. Alrighty, so in the first video, I broke down the generic stratagems and generic warlord traits and relics that you could give a Lord Discordant to make him defensive. I'm going to do a similar thing in this video. However, in the last video, I also went on to talk about some of the Legion-specific warlord traits, Legion-specific relics, Legion-specific stratagems that were of utility. In this video, I'm not going to do that simply because I think that the generic stratagems and the generic warlord traits and relics that we have access to are all better than the counterparts available through the Legion-specific channels. Most of the Legion-specific stuff is relics that are restricted to infantry only, or they might be restricted to various bits and pieces that make it so you can't take it on a demon, for example. So a lot of the Legion-specific stuff won't help you make a Lord Discordant more aggressive. There are some, like in the previous video, that will make him more defensive, but pretty much all of the aggressive stuff is going to be locked and not available to the Lord Discordant. Things like upgrading a weapon, but it has to be a cursed weapon, which he doesn't have, or it has to be a chainsword, which he doesn't have. So a lot of the Legion-specific stuff is really powerful, but it's unfortunately not able to be used on the Lord Discordant. So we're going to skip over the Legion specifics, and we're just going to talk straight down the line on what the generic stratagems, the generic warlord traits, and the generic relics are that I would advise if you want to try to use your Lord Discordant to do maximum damage. All right, so the way I see this working is there's two real standout options here. There's essentially two warlord traits and two relics that pair really well together with each other to make a really killy disco lord. And I had a really hard time deciding which of these I like better. So it's going to come up to your own personal taste, and I'll try to do my best to outline the pros and cons for each as we go. But basically there's two combos that you want to look for, and the best thing is if you really wanted to spend the CP, you could actually do this for both. So you could bring two Disco Lords and buff both of them up to the fucking wazoo. And realistically, you could bring a third and then use the defensive profiles and the defensive strategies from the previous video, as well as both of these aggressive loadouts. And you could run 3 Disco Lords if you really wanted to. It would burn all your CP pre-game, but it would be a very aggressive and powerful combination. So without further ado, let's get into the first combination. All right, so here we have the Warlord trait being Flames of Spite. Each time the Warlord makes a melee attack, you can re-roll that attack's wound roll, and each time the Warlord makes an attack, On an unmodified wound roll of a 6, the target suffers 1 mortal wound in addition to any normal damage. Alright, so this is really powerful, obviously, because the Disco Lord goes in with a total of 14 attacks. He gets 6 attacks with his Chain Glaive, and then he gets another 4 attacks with the Bladed Limbs, and another 4 attacks with his Mecha Tendril. So you get 14 attacks, and if you're re-rolling all of those wounds, and every 6 does a mortal, you're going to get a shit ton of mortals. On average, it works out to be about 4 or 5 mortal wounds if you're re-rolling aggressively, and that's just on top of the damage that you're going to be doing already. So the reroll wounds is already really good, but the fact that you're going to be dishing out mortal wounds on top makes the Flames of Spite a really good Warlord trait for the Lord Discordant. And the part that you do here is you pair it with the following relic. So this is a Demon Weapon Relic for a Chaos Undivided model. You select one melee weapon that the bearer is equipped with, and it gains the following abilities. So this is going to go on the Chain Glaive, and basically what that does is that weapon's a relic and has the demon weapon ability, and each time an attack is made with this demon weapon, if that attack successfully wounds the target suffers 1 mortal wound in addition to the normal damage. So you can probably see the synergy between these two, the Warlord trait and this relic, is basically now you're getting reroll wounds, and every time you do a wound, it's going to do a mortal wound as well as the wound, and if you roll a 6, it's going to do 2 mortal wounds in addition to that normal damage. So this guy goes in with 14 attacks, hitting on 2s, and then wounding on various things, depending on your target and depending on which weapon you're using. And then you're going to be doing a whole ton of mortal wounds in addition. So really powerful, turns this guy into an absolute blender. And this is, just a really standout combination if you want to send a Disco Lord in and do maximum damage with him. This one is also really good because it's a Chaos Undivided model, so it means you don't have to spend the 15 points to give him a Mark of Chaos, and it allows him to sort of slide into almost every legion and make sense thematically, and you're not going to have to worry about any synergies or any challenges like that. Now, for the second combination, and this is the one that I'm going to be running with my World Eaters, because this is a Khorne Disco Lord. You have to have Mark of Khorne, so you have to spend the extra 15 points on the unit to unlock this. And then basically you take the Warlord trait, Hatred Incarnate. And this is each time the Warlord fights, if it makes a charge move, performed a heroic intervention that turn, until the fight is resolved, add 1 to the strengths and attacks characteristics of this Warlord. And each time this Warlord makes a melee attack, you can reroll the attack's hit roll. So the rerolling hit rolls isn't really that impressive because, I mean, he's hitting on 2s already anyway. So he goes in with a lot of attacks, but he's going to hit with almost all of them now. The impressive thing here and the powerful thing here is the +1 strength and the +1 attack. Now, on face value, they don't sound as good as the Flames of Spite Warlord trait, which gave you reroll wounds and mortal wounds, right? However, they pair quite well with the next relic that we're going to talk about, because it also takes you to some interesting breakpoints in terms of strength. So the demon weapon that we're going to give him is called Zal the Wrathful. And basically what this does is it allows you to select one weapon that the bearer is equipped with, which once again is going to be the Chain Glaive. And that weapon is a relic for all purposes, has the demon weapon ability, and each time the bearer makes an attack with this weapon, add D3 to the damage characteristic of that attack. So now that Chain Glaive is going in, and it's got 2 damage plus D3, and if it's against a vehicle, it's going to be 3 plus D3. And because he's got the Mark of Khorne, he's going to have +1 strength from that. He's going to have a further +1 strength from his Warlord trait. He's going to get +2 strength from the Chain Glaive. So he's got +4, which means he'll be striking at strength 8. Now that's really important because that means all of those toughness 7 vehicles, he's going to go in and he's going to charge them, and he gets +1 to wound, and he would be wounding them on 3s because they're toughness 7, he's strength 8. So he goes into like little armigers and little knights and rhinos and all of those sorts of smaller vehicles, and he wounds them on 2s, doing D3 +3 damage. Really powerful. And against big knights and things like that, because he's now strength 8, he's going to be wounding them on 4s, but then he gets +1 to wound on the charge, so he's going to be wounding big knights on 3s, and again doing D3 +3 damage. So this guy absolutely rips vehicles apart. He's slightly less useful against the non-vehicles because the mortal wounds spill over from the previous set of relics, the Flames of Spite and the whatever the other one was called. They're obviously better into like hordes of infantry and stuff like that, whereas this is plus strength and plus damage, so it's really is specifically useful against those big chunky vehicles. However, if the rest of your army is able to deal with those smaller targets, this gives you a very reliable missile that you can send out. He moves 12 and then he charges something, so you keep him protected in a unit of Terminators or whatever, and you move that up into the center of the table. They hit your Terminators and do bounce, and then you send him out like a missile and he blows something up. So this guy is really powerful at taking out those big targets. So they're the two main combos that I see being useful. So you've got the Undivided Disco Lord and you've got the Khorne Disco Lord. And just to give you a bit of an idea on the damage that these guys can potentially do, I've done some maths to work out what damage you could reasonably expect to do to a knight. Now, I'm no mathematician, so they may not be 100% accurate, but these are a reasonable guide on what you could expect this guy's going to do when he charges a knight. So the Khorne Discordant, with his Chainglaive, he goes in with 7 attacks, hitting on 2s with full rerolls. So he's going in with those 7 attacks because he gets +1 attack from that Warlord trait, and then he goes in, he's hitting on 2s, so he's probably going to get 6 hits. Realistically, he's probably going to get 7, but I thought, be conservative with this. He's going to be wounding the big knight on 3s, which means he's probably going to do around 4 wounds. It's only going to get a 6-up save because it's AP 3. And then so he's probably going to get, however many through to end up doing around 15 to 20 wounds. So there's obviously a fair bit of variability in there, but 15 to 20 wounds on the strike is pretty powerful. Then he obviously hits with his bladed limbs. They attacks, hitting on 4 attacks, hitting on 2s. 4 hits probably, because he's hitting on 2s with rerolls. He's going to be wounding on 5+, so he's probably only going to get 1 wound, which they get a 5-up save against. So you can probably expect to do 1 unsaved wound for another 3 damage with his bladed limbs. And then with the Mecha Tendrils, he's going to have 4 attacks hitting on 2s, he's going to get 4 hits, but he is wounding on 6s with those. So you can probably expect maybe 1 wound, which he gets a 3-up save against, so you can expect to do no damage with your Mecha Tendrils. So that means that the total damage from the Lord Discordant, with the Mark of Khorne and the Khorne relics and Warlord traits, that gets you approximately 20 to 25 wounds. So if you combine his shooting with the Bale Flamer and any incidental damage that you've been able to do to the knight before he goes in and charges, it's very likely that he's going to take a knight and just bring it down and just kill it in a single fight phase, which is really powerful because he's only 175 points or 190 once you've got the Mark of Khorne on him, and he's going to be able to take down a 400-point knight. As for the Undivided Lord Discordant, you've got the Chainglaive, he gets 6 attacks, he's hitting on 2s, he's probably going to get 5 hits. He's going to be wounding on 4s with full rerolls. So obviously he's going in at strength 6 because he doesn't get the +1 from the Mark of Khorne and he doesn't get the +1 from his relic. From the Warlord trait. However, he is getting full rerolls to wound. So he's probably going to end up doing about 4 wounds, which they get a 6-up save against. So he's probably going to do about 8 damage, plus approximately 4 mortal wounds on top of that. Because if he gets 4 successful wounds through, then he gets 4 successful wounds is 4 mortal wounds in addition because of his relic, his demon weapon. Then he goes in with the bladed limbs, does another 4 attacks, hitting on 2s, 4 hits, wounding on 5s with full rerolls. So he probably does another 2 wounds, of which they get a 5-up save. So he's probably going to do roughly 2 unsaved wounds for another 6 damage, and another 2 mortal wounds from those 2 unsaved wounds. Then he goes in with the Mecha Tendrils, gets 4 attacks, hitting on 2s, 4 hits, wounding on 6s with full rerolls. So he does maybe 2 wounds going through, which he gets a 3-up save against. So you might do a 1 unsaved wound, which he's going to do 2 damage, plus an additional 2 mortals for the 2 wounds that went through. And then on top of all of that, you've got the Flames of Spite. So with a total of 14 attacks with rerolls, you're likely to get around 4 6s on your wound rolls, which would be an additional 4 mortal wounds from Flames of Spite. So again, this guy goes into a big knight and does around 20 to 25 wounds. So he's also a really good knight killer. This guy's probably slightly better at killing large squads, like standard Marines, big infantry blobs, things like that. However, I think that the Khorne version is probably better at killing elite things like paladins, like any sort of Terminators or anything really chunky, because he's going in with that 3+ D3 damage. So if they've got a unit that's 3 wounds with a feel no pain save or something like that, he's just going to be reliably killing. Whereas the guy who's doing the mortal wounds, he's going to be sort of more granular damage, and he's not going to be able to just chunk straight big guys out. So I think there's definitely an argument could be made for both. As I will be running World Eaters predominantly, I actually can't take the Undivided one, because in a World Eaters army, everything has to have the Mark of Khorne. However, luckily, the second option for a really killy Disco Lord happens to be a Mark of Khorne. So they're my two contenders for the most powerful Lord Discordants if your goal is to just send them out like a missile and blow something the fuck up. And you can also wield them quite creatively where, say if your opponent's got knights and there's like a knight there, a knight there, a knight there, some armigers around, you can send him out, but then also send out another unit. They both charge. You fight with the Disco Lord first. He blows up the knight. And then this unit, because it made a charge move, it can now pile in and consolidate. And you basically use that pile in and consolidate to create a screen in front of your Disco Lord so that he can't be shot on return. And then the next turn, that unit moves out, the Disco Lord launches across, and you can try to string combos where you end up blowing up across a couple of turns. You might blow up 2 or 3 big vehicles with him before your opponent's able to effectively put him down. So this aggressive Disco Lord is going to be really, really powerful because he has the inbuilt durability of character protection, and he's also got a 2-up save and toughness 6, so he's no pushover. But that character protection means that if you wield him correctly, you can get multiple uses out of him, and the use that you're going to get is going to be very, very powerful. So yeah, I'll leave the decision to you on what you think is going to fit better in your army, whether you want to go with the defensive Disco Lord, try to bait your opponent into picking those bad secondaries, or whether you want to go with the aggressive Disco Lord and then pick some of the Chaos Space Marine specific secondaries which require characters killing other things in order to generate victory points. He's really good at that. So an argument could be made, you take these two guys, you put a big unit of Terminators in front of them, you move up into the center of the table, the Terminators in the center of the table do the actions and stuff, and then these two Disco Lords launch out and get kills. And those two Disco Lords plus Abaddon is a really powerful little nugget of characters that you can send out. And if you only have those 3, people probably aren't going to pick Assassinate, because they're going to be like, fuck, in order to get Assassinate, I have to kill Abaddon, which is hard, and 2 Lord Discordants. Forget about it, right? So that's a really interesting combination. Works really good with a few different legions because, as I said, neither of these are Legion locked. None of them are Legion specific Warlord traits relics. So there's a lot of utility there. And yeah, I look forward to seeing it on the tables and reporting back to you guys. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Which of these two do you think is the more powerful Disco Lord? Or do you prefer the defensive style Disco Lord with the -1 to wound, or the +1 to save, or the 5-up feel no pain, like that really hard cookie to crack? Or do you prefer those ones that go out like missiles and fuck shit up? Personally, I'm into fucking shit up. So I'll be running these guys more often than not and saving the defensive stuff for my Terminator bricks and things like that. But yeah, let me know in the comments below which one you think is better. If you like these videos, please make sure you head over to my Patreon. You can sign up for $1 a month, which is 25 cents a week, which is fuck all, right? But every time somebody does that, it shows me that people are interested in what I'm doing and that they support me, and it all adds up on my end. So a little bit off your back, but it's a really good showing of support for me, and I very much appreciate every single Patreon on there. So make sure you do that. And also check out the video at the end of this where I demonstrate my new neoprene objective markers, which you can buy at the link in the description. And every time you buy one of those, that shows a little bit of support to the channel as well. And finally, let me know what you'd like to see in the next couple of videos. Which units would you like to see deep dives on? Would you like to see more focusing on the Legion specific stuff? Or would you like to see more focusing on the general combos? Let me know and I'll make sure that I get to it, and I'll hit you guys back soon. Cheers. Do your objective markers ever get lost behind terrain or other models and become difficult to see? Do they ever get bumped and accidentally moved during a game? And do they ever spark arguments about distances? Well, not anymore. Introducing the blog for the Blood God, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers. Made from the same material as astronaut suits, or maybe military equipment, or probably neither of those things, this 2mm thick neoprene synthetic rubber is tear resistant, water resistant, and is designed to last. But that's not all. The blog for the blood god, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers come in a variety of different designs and styles to suit any faction represented in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. These objective markers are a perfect gift for yourself or a friend, and are a perfect way to flex and show your opponent that not only are you a smarter, cooler, and better 40k player than them, but you also have more disposable income than they do. For the low price of $25, you'll get not one, not two, but 6 neoprene objective markers, perfectly designed for 9th edition Warhammer 40k. But wait, there's more. For a limited time only, people who sign up on Patreon to support Blog for the Blood God as a Skull Champion tier $5 per month member will gain access to a custom design service where I will design a unique logo to support their gaming club, like the one I did to the left here for the Potato Farmers local gaming club here in Melbourne. Follow the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today.